Welcome into another edition of the DLF Dynasty podcast. My name's Dan Myler, and I am with Ryan McDowell and Matt Price for another edition of the pod. Ryan, it's a holiday season. Christmas right around the corner. Of course, New Year's, lots of others celebrating other holidays as well. So we're in a giving spirit. I don't know if all the fantasy players out there were in giving moods this week, however.
Yeah, that's news to me on the giving spirit. I guess I gave my opponents a nice present this week because I had some rough games. I'm sure everyone did because the scores were unpredictable this week.
Scores are a little low for sure. We got off to a bang on Thursday night, of course, with the Chiefs and the Chargers, but things were downhill from there, Matt.
Yeah, it seems like, outside of maybe the Packer game, which we'll get to, that was probably the best game of the week. We started off with a really good one, especially that second half. Had some pretty terrible comments by some of the announcers, but otherwise it was a great game. Well wishes to Donald Parham, who was definitely not just cold.
Yes, holy cow. I don't even know how to respond to that. I was like many who are watching, I'm sure, like jaw wide open. Can't believe we were hearing what we were hearing.
It was 56 degrees, you guys. It was 56 degrees.
Wow. We might as well get to these games. As we said, holiday season. So happy holidays to everybody. There's still some football to be played. Once again, we're recording on Sunday night, and usually that leaves only a couple of games that we're not going to comment on. Of course, with everything that happened throughout the week, we get the extra few games early in the week. So by the time you listen to this, you might have already seen those games. We apologize for not getting to them, but we record on Sunday nights. So let's kick off the Thursday night game, Chiefs and Chargers. Kansas City wins it 34-28. Lots of fireworks in this one, guys. Patrick Mahomes, 400 yards, 3 touchdowns, added 30 rushing yards. That's what we expect from Mahomes as dynasty players. Also, Travis Kelce went off 10 for 191 and 2. Tyreek went off 12 for 148 and a score. So if you were playing against them, you were very, very mad, Matt. But if you had them on your team, so you started the week off on a high note.
Yeah, absolutely. Kelce was clearly a week winner. If you had him in the first round of playoffs, you probably are advancing, I would say. I wanted to take a look at Justin Herbert and what he's done for my portion of this game, and I kind of think he's in that top tier. I mean, maybe this isn't a hot take at all. I think we've put Mahomes on this pedestal, and he's kind of been the 101 in super flex leagues, kind of all by himself. I've personally moved Lamar Jackson ahead of him. I think you can make an argument for some other guys, but I kind of feel like Justin Herbert belongs in that range as well. He was quarterback 9 in his rookie season. He's quarterback 3 entering week 15. Not necessarily a stellar game from a fantasy standpoint, but good enough. And I almost feel like within this top tier of quarterbacks, we have to group them in a certain way, because I feel like Mahomes has come back to the pack a little bit. I think you have the elite rushers, upside guys like Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray, and Josh Allen. And I think if you want to include Jalen Hurts, you could, but he's clearly not in the class as these other guys yet. But then you have these two that are going to give you some stuff on the ground, and they have some upside there. We have Mahomes as a 62-yard game earlier against Buffalo. We saw Herbert rush for 90 yards against Pittsburgh. So he's. I mean, I don't know. Is it too hot takey to say that he and Mahomes are pretty equal in value at this point? And I do have some trades if you're interested in that.
Well, I think maybe it is a little hot takey, but I don't know if it's that far off or out of bounds to say that. It's certainly worth having a conversation over. I would probably venture to say, and Ryan, we need your opinion on this as well, that most dynasty players would still much rather have Mahomes, and probably by a significant enough margin that you could, if you were moving from Mahomes down to Herbert, and I say down in quotations, of course, that you could probably get a relatively significant piece back.
Yeah, I think so. We did just post our latest Dynasty ADP over at DLF, of course, from this month and from our December ADP. And according to that, Justin Herbert is the quarterback 5 behind the names that Matt just mentioned: Mahomes, Allen, Kyler, and Lamar. But Matt, you said that Mahomes has come back to to the pack, which he certainly has. But I really think all 4 of those guys have come back to the pack.
Agreed.
I mean, I think overall it's fair to say, looking at their entire season as a whole, Allen, Kyler, and Lamar have been slight disappointments. Of course, all 3 have had some wow games, have had those upside games that we expect from them. But to put it together consistently over the entire season, it just hasn't happened. Of course, Kyler missed some games with injury, so he a little bit different case there. But I would still have those 4 ahead and in a different tier than Herbert. But I don't think it's crazy either.
The thing that really gets me when it comes to Herbert is his rushing upside is great, but it feels like it teeters back and forth a little bit more than some of the other names that we mentioned. Even Mahomes, it feels like a couple times a game, he knows when to pull it down and get those yards and pick up a first down or maybe even score a touchdown. Kyler, of course, does his thing. Lamar is almost all run sometimes as far as fantasy points comes. And Josh Allen's consistent that way as well. Herbert, on the other hand, it seems like it comes and goes, and he might go for those 60 yards in one game, and then you'll have a game where he only runs it once for 6 or 8 yards. And you think, where'd that production go? We really need that for him to take that step all the way to the top of our quarterback rankings. What were some of the trades that you mentioned there, Matt? Because I'd love to know those.
I just, before I get to the trades, but I also want to throw out one more fun stat. I just thought no real relevance, I guess, to anything Dynasty, but I just thought it was fun. Mahomes has the 9th most single game rushing yard by a Kansas City Chief. There are 8 ahead of him, which I thought was kind of funny, but Herbert is the all-time single game rusher for a quarterback for the Chargers. Some trades. Herbert for Trevor Lawrence, Alex Collins in a second. That's the most recent one, about 3 days ago. That seems like a slam dunk to me for Herbert at this point, unless you are still, I'm still holding out for hope for Lawrence. He's not dead, but if I can go ahead and get Herbert for that, I'm happy to do it. A Herbert for Mahomes straight up late last week in November. So, I mean, somebody feels like they're pretty close. And then Herbert Foreman, this is kind of a lot of pieces, but Herbert Foreman 2022 second for Russell Wilson, a 23 and a 23 first, and Quez Watkins. So basically Russell Wilson and a first for Herbert, if we could break it down that way. I think I want Herbert there too. So I think he's attainable. I think what you said there about them all kind of coming back to the pack is really the most important piece of this. Is if you have Mahomes and don't mind sliding back to a Herbert and picking up an extra piece, that's a move that I feel like is probably a win.
Of course, he went off on Thursday night, 236 yards, 2 touchdowns, added 16 rushing yards in the rushing touchdown to create another quarterback one performance. For the rest of the Chargers, Austin Eckler in limited snaps, 12 carries for 59 in a score, caught 4, so came through for us. And then Keenan Allen, 6 for 78 and a touchdown. That's a pretty good showing for him in his return. For the Chiefs, I mentioned those stat lines of the big studs, guys. I want to talk a little bit about Clyde Edwards-Helaire because the consensus, it feels still, Ryan, I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that Edwards-Helaire has a lot of upside, and he's a guy that you want on your dynasty roster. But 9 carries for 32 yards. I know they were playing from behind for most of the game, but that would suggest that a pass-catching running back, as he is, would be involved in the passing game, and that wasn't the case. Just 2 catches for 18 yards in this ball game. In fact, Williams was on the field for many of those opportunities throughout the third and fourth quarter. So I guess my question is, do we really want CEH in our starting lineups going into next season? I hesitate to say yes. I have a hard time saying I want to build around him as part of my running back core, as my running back 1, for sure not. Even as my running back 2, feels to me like he is so inconsistent that I don't even want any part of it anymore.
Well, you mentioned that word upside, and we associate that word with CEH because he's young, because he was because he's with the Chiefs, because he was a first round NFL draft pick and the 101 pick in so many rookie drafts. But that upside is something we haven't really seen now through almost 2 full seasons. This year, he has just 2 running back 1 games. Those games were in those weeks, he was the RB10 on the week and the RB12. So he has not finished higher than RB10 in a single game this season. Last year, he had 4 RB1 games. Those were 11, 12, 5, and 2. So 2 games in his career higher than the RB10. You look at other players that have played, other running backs for the Chiefs over these 2 years. Darwin Thompson popped up with an RB3 game last year. Darrell Williams, when Clyde Edwards-Helaire was missing time earlier this year, was the RB1 and the RB7. And even Derek Gore in some garbage time had a running back 12 game just a couple weeks ago. So it's an upside spot, right? The Kansas City running back is an upside spot, and Darrell Williams has shown us that. Clyde Edwards-Helaire really hasn't. So that's the frustrating part. In that ADP I mentioned, he's down to running back 16. And honestly, looking at some of the names below him, Aaron Jones, J.K. Dobbins, Cam Akers, I think he's going to fall further than that as the offseason gets started.
Yeah, my point of this whole thing is if I have Clyde, I want to try to move on early in the offseason, kind of hoping for the big playoff run maybe on those nationally televised games. He has 1 or 2 big games there that might recreate some of that value that he's had in the past. And hopefully he can capitalize on that, because I see nothing but his value, dynasty value, going down in the coming weeks and months. Let's move on to the Colts and the Patriots. Indianapolis takes this one 27-17. Jonathan Taylor is the story here, of course. 29 carries, 170 yards, and the big touchdown run late in the game to seal it. I don't know if we need to wax poetically anymore about Jonathan Taylor and his upside. It was kind of frustrating for Taylor managers to see Nyheim Hines get that early touchdown. Taylor made a nice block on the play, of course. The Patriots, they attacked Carson Wentz's ability to produce fantasy points in this game, if you know what I mean. Wentz just 57 yards and a touchdown, threw a pick, 17 rushing yards. But if you're counting on him, they didn't do it. Hunter Henry came through. He had a big game, 6 catches for 77 yards and 2 touchdowns. How about the Bills and the Panthers as we get to the Sunday games? Josh Allen, 210 yards, 3 touchdowns, 24 rushing yards. And guys, I got to talk about Gabriel Davis, because he's been in the shadows all season long behind Emmanuel Sanders. And, this time last year, we were looking at Gabriel Davis with his touchdowns every other week and saying, man, if they could really add him to this offense in 2021, this offense could take off. Gabriel Davis's value in dynasty leagues could take off. And then they signed Emmanuel Sanders. Davis has had a couple flashes, but now he gets his chance with Sanders on the sideline on Sunday against the Panthers. 5 catches for 85 yards, 2 scores, including a real nice contested catch in the back of the end zone. He's going to finish the week as a wide receiver 1 in most leagues, Ryan, and his arrow is certainly pointing up.
Absolutely. I would say he's almost back to where he was at the end of last season, his rookie year, just with this past game and a half, really, of production. And, the Bills are what, 8-6 now, I think. And they're not a lock for the playoffs at this point, which is crazy. They were a Super Bowl favorite at one point earlier in the season. And, it does kind of make you second guess some of the moves they've made. Like Sanders had some solid games earlier in the year, but they wasted Gabriel Davis, it feels like, for most of this year. So he's another player who's going to be a value gain for sure.
Yeah, as I mentioned, 5 catches for 85 yards, led the team in receptions and yards, and obviously touchdowns as well. I'm excited to watch him play over the last 3 weeks of the regular season and into the playoffs if the Bills are able to make it in there. He's a guy, as I said, the arrow is certainly pointing up. Speaking of that arrow, the Buffalo running game, we usually don't associate that, Ryan, with any arrows pointing up, but Devin Singletary, he had a little bit of juice on Sunday against that Panthers front 7, 22 carries for 86 yards and a score. That backfield might be his. Nobody else really got a shot back there.
Yeah, Zach Moss is certainly in the doghouse. This is third healthy scratch over the past month for Zach Moss, the fourth this season. Matt Breida was kind of a fun little experiment for a while there, but that seems to be over. He had just one carry, and obviously Josh Allen is always a threat to run the ball, but in this game specifically, just 3 carries, 24 yards on those. But it was all Singletary. He played 93% of the snaps, and no Buffalo running back had played that many since week 16 of the 2019 season. So if really any running back, if it were Singletary, if it were Moss, whoever it might be, even if it's Breida, who's going to get the huge workload, that's a player we should be interested in, because for so long, basically for 2 or 3 straight years, they've just rolled out a committee, and Allen has been a threat there as well. But if they're going to lean on one running back, if it's Singletary, then we should start paying attention to that.
Well, the other part of that, especially on Sunday against Carolina, is once they got the lead, they turned and handed it to Singletary. Yeah. We don't see a lot of 25 games where Allen turns around 25 times and even hands it off to anybody, let alone to one guy, Singletary getting 22 of them. So if they're going to commit to a running game at home in the weather in Buffalo, that speaks to a value surge for Singletary for sure. On the other side of things, Matt, DJ Moore is such a talented wide receiver. Just 6 catches, just 48 yards in this one against Buffalo's tough secondary on 11 targets. What are your thoughts on DJ Moore and his value moving forward?
Yeah, I just want to throw out this and have a discussion about it with you guys, because we certainly value him highly. He's not at his low point currently. He's not at his high point currently in terms of where we valued him in ADP throughout his career. He's currently the 26th player off the board, wide receiver 12 in December ADP, so still at that tail end of the wide receiver 1 position. He's the wide receiver 19 this season, entering week 15, so not counting this week's stats. And if you go back to his historical production, last season he was wide receiver 25. In 2019, he was wide receiver 16, and his rookie season he was the wide receiver 36. Yeah, we've been close to valuing him as a wide receiver 1 or a fringe wide receiver 1, I should say, for most careers. So I wonder if we're overvaluing him a little bit. He's going to be 25 entering next season, which is obviously still good. He's an unrestricted free agent in 2023. So I don't know. It just, as good as he is, like you said, like the production doesn't seem to match how we are valuing him. And he's at the mid range of his value. Back in his low point was back last December, a year ago. He was 37th overall at that time. So he's up a little bit. I don't know. I'm honestly at a loss of what to do with him. I don't really want to value him as a wide receiver 1, but that seems to be where the community is at.
Well, the touchdown production has dropped, of course, and maybe that has to do with the quarterback play, or maybe it has to do with the offensive coordinator and play calling. I'm certainly not going to hold any stat line that he posts against him when Cam Newton is shot putting passes to the outside to guys. So recently he's been all right. I mentioned the touchdown, production has slipped in the first 4 weeks. He scored 3 touchdowns, then the big drought, scored against Washington a few weeks back. And since then he's had a 100-yard game, 10 targets in 3 straight. It's just the eye test. He passes. He's constantly open. Mm-hmm. You regularly see, there was a throw against Buffalo on Sunday where he had to reach way behind him on a slant. That this is a big play in the game. He's going to turn upfield. He had the guy beat and have yards after the catch. And maybe it's 7 for 77. And then we're a lot more excited and you see the big play, and it's not these little 5-yard hitch routes that he's catching, which seems to be all he did, hitches and drags against the Bills. So, I know you're talking more in a broad sense and things like that, Matt. I certainly understand that. I just think he constantly passes that eye test. He constantly makes me feel like that is an NFL receiver. And if he has a quarterback that can consistently get him the football, he's going to be a big time playmaker for a lot of years. And, you mentioned his contract situation. I think the Panthers are going to throw the bag at him because they have to realize how talented he is. He's going to resign. They just got to fix this quarterback situation. So if I'm a dynasty manager with him, I'm holding on until he gets a quarterback that can get him the football.
Are you buying though?
I'm buying. I'll buy if the right deal comes around. You know, I'm never going to overspend on anybody, or I try not to anyway. But I'm willing to go after DJ Moore if somebody's frustrated, which it sounds like maybe you might be, Matt.
I've got a few to throw at you. I think a couple of these are slam dunks for DJ Moore. Like after I looked at the actual trades that are happening, I feel a lot better about where he's at. A single first, that's easy. That's a slam dunk, right?
Yeah, you're giving a first.
Yeah, any first. Javonte Williams, Alan Lazard for Moore and a first. I probably want more on that side pretty easily. Even as much excited we are about Javonte, I probably want the wide receiver in the pick.
I take it because it's a first. Yeah.
Yeah. And then this last one I think is heavily not on the Moore side. It's DJ Moore and a whole bunch of picks. It's one of the Ryan McDowell specials where he's like, look at all these picks. So they're all like third, fourth, and fifth. There's only a first. There's a first in 2024, which is so far away. So Moore and a whole bunch of crappy picks in the 2024 first for Cooper Kupp. I think you're taking Kupp on that one.
I'll take Kupp on that side, but
yeah. So it's kind of all over the place.
Ryan? Did you recently get DJ Moore somewhere?
I like the idea.
Or get Kupp, I should say.
Yeah, I mean, so weeks 1 through 4, DJ Moore was the wide receiver 4 through the first month of the season.
And dynasty managers were talking about it.
Oh,
we were all excited about it.
Well, we thought that this was it, right?
Yeah.
Carolina was playing well.
Darnold looked like an all-world quarterback.
Yeah, Darnold was somehow the answer after the first 3 or 4 weeks. But since that time, DJ Moore is just the wide receiver 26, which is, that's not terrible. It's not those Mike Williams splits we had a few weeks ago where he was in the 80s or 90s or something. But as Matt said, for a player that we're valuing as a wide receiver 1, that's where the problem comes in. And Dan, you're right. They need to fix the quarterback. I mean, we said it when Cam Newton was the starter. We said it last year when Teddy was the starter. And they haven't fixed it yet. So, I mean, it feels like the same story that we've told with Cortland Sutton and with Jerry Jeudy, that we like these guys, but they need a quarterback. And, I'm starting to doubt if that's going to happen soon.
Well, I kind of feel like it's going to. The Carolina's struggling. Obviously, they're looking at a top 5 pick now once again, and they're not going to go into next season with just Sam Darnold under contract. They're going to have a pivot of some kind, whether that be a draft pick or a veteran that becomes available in free agency. They have to have somebody else available. They're going to be looking to upgrade the position as a whole, whether that be a rookie or a veteran. So I think there is light at the end of the tunnel in the DJ Moore sweepstakes or the DJ Moore value barometer, whatever you may want to call it. We just got to bide our time and continue to do that until he gets that opportunity.
Well, they have. Sorry, one more thing. They have been aggressive. At least they've been rumored to be aggressive on Deshaun Watson. Yep. We assume they would be aggressive on Aaron Rodgers if he becomes available this offseason. Basically, any big name that they think can be an upgrade. And dynasty managers, based on our ADP, based on these trades that we see in the Trade Finder, we already love DJ Moore. So once he gets that quarterback, certainly if it's a guy like Rodgers or Watson, the value is really going to go crazy.
We need to keep preaching patience.
I just hope he's not 28 by the time that happens. That's all.
Yeah, I hope not either. But the track record here over the last couple of years for the Panthers, and we don't have to spend a whole lot more time on this, is that they've continued to be aggressive, right? Like Ryan said, they've been aggressive on guys that they haven't gotten. They were in the Matthew Stafford sweepstakes. They were making offers there. They tried multiple times to get a big upgrade last season and kind of settled for Sam Darnold. Didn't want to do the rookie thing. So we'll see what they do now. Like I said, they're going to do something. We just, please be patient. And if you're not going to be patient, you're going to sell low, sell him to me. The Dolphins, they beat the Jets 31-24, and Duke Johnson, yes, that Duke Johnson resurfaced on everybody's bench, maybe on some waiver wires out there, probably on some waiver wires out there. 22 carries for 107 yards and 2 touchdowns for a guy that many probably thought, Ryan, was out of the league.
Yeah, it's his third best game ever based on fantasy points, and his best game since the middle of 2018. So for whatever reason, and maybe for some of the reasons we saw in this game, this guy has always been a favorite of the fantasy community. Seems to be a player that so many root for.
I saw a couple victory laps.
Sure. I mean,
Twitter,
3 or 4 year old victory laps. Go for it.
Yeah.
But a player that seemingly collectively we've always been rooting for. You know, he just needs a shot. He shared the backfield with multiple players over his career, and this was the time he finally got a real chance to be the workhorse back. Well, I thought it was interesting. Sorry, Matt. I thought it was interesting. He's been known as a pass catching back over his career. He just gets one target. He had a 20-yard catch. So as good as his game was in this one, it feels like it could have been bigger, actually.
Yeah, that's him wrong.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, like he was a pass catching back. I mean, he was the Kareem Hunt before there was a Kareem Hunt in Cleveland, right? So he has upside. I mean, presumably he has upside. Now we do have to remember this was the Jets, and maybe he can't run 22 times between the tackles against another team. But you know, there's something there if Gaskins is going to continue to not be available.
Yeah, coming up, things get a little more difficult too. They go to the Saints, then to Tennessee, and then finish up with the Patriots. So I don't know if we're expecting big rushing performances from Duke Johnson coming up.
I have him on three rosters, and I don't think I'm going to start him at any of them again next week, probably.
No, and this is not a coming out party. You know, this is going to be a fluke, big picture when we look back on this game, which is fine. I mean, he's a talented back, but he's towards the end of his career. And I don't want to make too many assumptions because Myles Gaskin is coming off the COVID list and basically didn't practice at all week.
And appeared limited, right?
Yeah.
In this game?
Certainly limited. I'm still having a hard time looking at Myles Gaskin as a long-term option for this team. And I get the feeling they're probably looking at him the same way, that once they can find a better option, whether it's a free agent or a rookie, that he's not long for that starter job.
It doesn't feel that way. It feels like we're going to go into the draft and Miami's going to once again be one of the teams that we're excited for them taking a running back.
But do they care about running back? It seems to me they've proven that they don't. I guess there were the rumors that maybe they were going to take Javonte if Denver didn't jump in front of them. But other than that, it just seems like the way they've operated with this coaching staff that they don't really value it. And maybe that's just because they're smart and are waiting until it's the final piece they need to add. I hope that's
what I was going to say.
I hope that's it.
That's Flores for you. He's a chip off the old block, right? He's gonna play the game just like Coach Belichick does in New England. And you know, on that note, I'm so glad that the Dolphins kind of pulled themselves out of the gutter here 6 or 7 weeks ago, whatever it's been. They've won 6 or 7 games in a row because Flores is a good coach, and that's good for the players that we're excited about there. And there are players to be excited about, especially Jalen Waddle. And I know Ryan, you played him in a couple spots this week against the Jets. I've been slowly coming around again on Tua Tagovailoa, 196 yards and 2 touchdowns on Sunday against the Jets. Not exactly the blow up performance maybe we wanted, but they eased things back in the second half a little bit, made things a little bit easier on them, and then kept just turning around and giving it to Duke Johnson because they knew they could.
Yeah, I think it shows, and I saw many people suggest this throughout the day on social media. We learned in this game how important Jalen Waddle is to this offense.
Absolutely.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
I expected a big game from Devontae Parker. He got the 8 targets, just 4 for 68, did score a touchdown. Expecting a game from Devontae Parker is a fool's errand, though, at this point, it seems. Surprise of the week. Holy cow. I doubt anybody bet on this one. The Lions beat the Cardinals 30-12. Man, the Cardinals couldn't get anything going in this one, but the Lions looked like a real NFL team. Jared Goff, he throws for 216 yards, throws 3 touchdown passes, and what the heck? Craig Reynolds, he looked dynamic. He got the edge a couple of times, 26 carries, 112 yards on the ground. I wish he would have got into the end zone, honestly, because he played really, really well. He's going to be around next year. I can't believe I'm saying that, but he came out of nowhere. So I don't know if we need to talk a lot about what the Lions did for dynasty value. Maybe we can talk a little bit more about Amon-Ra St. Brown, 8 for 90 and a touchdown, or Josh Reynolds, 6 for 68 in a score. It really seems to me, Matt, that we should probably focus on Arizona. Without DeAndre Hopkins, sure, Christian Kirk has a big game, 9 for 94 and a score, but they couldn't do anything on offense.
No, they really couldn't. Detroit they were real gritty today. Let's just say that. Sure. They were coming after the quarterback, yada yada. I did want to talk about Christian Kirk's value though, coming up, because he's kind of an interesting player coming up, especially once we get to next season, because he's going to be unrestricted free agent next season. I started off looking at him based on, what does his value look like after DeAndre Hopkins maybe moves on. But maybe he's not back with Arizona next year. So he's on pace for career highs in receptions, yards per target, and touchdowns. Like I said, he'll be a UFA after next season. He's 26. He'll be 26 entering next season. He's the wide receiver 27 currently in PPR scoring. And December ADP, he was the wide receiver 46. 3 days ago, he went for a single 2022 second round pick, which seems low to me, but that's why I kind of wanted to throw it out
first, though.
That's why I kind of wanted to throw it out to you guys. Is he a target, and would you pay a first, or what is the most you think you could pay? Would you pay more than a second? Do you think that's fair? I don't think that's getting it done now, personally, but
there's no way I would pay a first.
No first for
Kirk. It's just not a player I trust, and I know you were talking about his free agent status. It's tough to know what language to use at this point of the year, but just to be clear, he's a free agent after this season. Right. So he's in his final weeks potentially with the team, and this is of course is a team, one of those teams we want pieces of. So if he does move on, if he gets some kind of payday and he ends up with one of 25 other teams that are worse off offensively than the Cardinals, then obviously I think that's a clear downgrade. Just too inconsistent for me.
Well, when we think about this upcoming receiver group that are going to be hit free agency, there are a couple big names, and we'll kind of avoid them. He reminds me a little bit of, and is on the same career trajectory maybe of Michael Gallup, who we talked about last week. Both still considered relatively young, have had more talented receivers on the roster and played in the shadows for a few years now. But maybe he should be seen as a poor man's version. I think we all talked about being all right, probably giving up a second round pick for Gallup a week ago. If you're looking for a guy with a little bit of upside down the road, maybe Christian Kirk is the guy that if you can't get Gallup, you can pivot that way. And if he lands in a good spot, I don't know how you're going to get much better than Arizona in that offense that likes to throw it all over the place. But he could take a step forward in dynasty value if he lands in the right spot. With that said, though, it feels like he could take a big step back if he ends up with a poor quarterback. If he ends up with a Sam Darnold or Cam Newton, like going back to the DJ Moore conversation, he could be sent to purgatory because he's not talented enough to overcome poor quarterback play. It appears at this point. Ryan, you had a note here about Rondale Moore. He was pretty much a ghost in this game. 3 catches for 9 yards. Some anticipated a bigger role for him with DeAndre Hopkins sidelined, of course. So what are we taking from Rondale Moore's performance? He probably should have gotten more opportunities than he did, just 4 touches of the football.
Yeah, it's a little disappointing, and it's kind of been the same thing all season. He had that one blow-up game in week 2 or 3. That was actually the only game all season that he's been inside the top 20 fantasy wide receivers on any given week. So I would say a disappointing year for Rondale Moore. As we already talked about, Christian Kirk is a free agent, as is AJ Green. So you potentially see some opportunity there if Kirk moves on, or especially if both of those players move on. I think I'm going to be buying Rondale Moore this offseason. Definitely not ready to give up on him, but ultimately pretty disappointed with his rookie season.
It was kind of frustrating because there were opportunities down the field for guys like Antoine Wesley. Almost caught a touchdown in the corner of the end zone. We even saw an Andy Isabella sighting in this game. He got on the field for a few snaps, and all I could think on those opportunities was, where's Rondale Moore on that? Where's, especially the Wesley target? That was a wheel route, one of those Rondale Moore type opportunities that sure, he's not as big and things like that, but man, he's a slick player. He can catch everything thrown his way, and I thought he should have got that chance. But
just get the ball in his hands. Like,
no doubt.
I feel like it shouldn't be that hard, and then you would see what he can do.
He's just a wee little guy, and they might be worried about that.
Use him as a running back more. I mean, give him some touches out of the backfield. Do something.
Yeah, he got 1 carry in this one, 3 catches for 9. It wasn't enough for dynasty managers, that's for sure. Speaking of not enough, the Texans and the Jaguars, there's not enough talent on those rosters. Texans win this one 30-16. Brandon Cooks was probably the highlight of the game. 7 catches, 102 yards, and 2 touchdowns. I had to stick him in a couple lineups, so I'm thrilled about that. This game also featured the second best rookie quarterback in this class, and that's probably Davis Mills. 209 yards, 2 touchdowns, threw a pick, but Trevor Lawrence, once again, disappointing. 210, no touchdowns, no picks. It's, I don't know. Should we talk about Urban Meyer getting fired? I guess we can talk about that, Ryan.
Yeah, I mean, we all kind of saw it coming. We were basically begging for it just last week, and really every fantasy player, every football fan has been counting down until that happened. So I'm glad they didn't wait until the end of the regular season to pull that trigger and to start moving on. I said last week, as soon as that happens, we'll see the value of guys like Trevor Lawrence and James Robinson start to go up. I think we can probably already see that from the trade finder and just from conversations that are going on Twitter or on the DLF forum, et cetera. This game didn't necessarily show that, even against Houston. A little bit disappointing there too, but yeah, the Davis Mills line there. Come on, Dan.
He's been the second best rookie quarterback, dude. By any metric, he has been. It's not.
I do think,
but that's not saying anything about Mills. That's saying everything about the other quarterbacks.
Sure. And I do think, though, I mean, you look at the situation they're in. The Texans win this game. They drop down the draft order. They're not going to have the first pick at this point. They'll still have likely the third pick, at least a top 5 pick. They're not going to be in a position to draft a quarterback unless something really changes between now and then. So unless they pull off a trade where they are getting a quarterback in exchange for Deshaun Watson, I think Davis Mills has a good chance to be the starter next year, based on what we've seen over the past few weeks.
Yeah, he just good enough to hold on to a job or be young enough and all that combination that maybe they think he deserves a shot and just get a veteran to back him up. Could be a wasted season. James Robinson he got more opportunities, 18 carries, 75 yards and a touchdown, also caught 3 passes in this one. The Cowboys beat up on the Giants 21-6. Zeke found pay dirt. He scored, caught 3. Had about 72 yards from scrimmage. Dalton Schultz just kept catching the football. 8 catches for 67 and a score. Dak was relatively disappointing. CeeDee Lamb dropped a couple passes. Ryan, what's up with this Cowboys offense? It seems like Dak just can never get going early in games, and it just bleeds into the second half.
I don't know. Ezekiel Elliott has taken a lot of heat over the past few weeks, and most of that probably deserved based on his play. But Dak Prescott hasn't been right either. Certainly going to finish outside of the QB1 range this week, even with several games to come. Could drop as low as quarterback 20, and that's where he's been. If you look at the past 4 weeks heading into this week, quarterback 29, he did have a quarterback 3 game against the Raiders, but then quarterback 23, quarterback 26, and we'll see where he lands this week. He and really the Cowboys offense as a whole has been disappointing. So I'm not putting all of that on Elliott.
Yeah, it can't be. And Zeke, he looked sluggish on a couple of plays, but that touchdown run, he had a little bit of burst on that play. He carried the whole defensive line for a first down on a play in the middle of the game as well. He's only going to see 12 to 16 carries in a game. And you just got to hope he falls into the end zone at this point and comes back healthy in 2022, because he's clearly not that at this point. Dak, I'm not quite sure what his reason is. I'm going to blame Mike McCarthy. It's his fault. For the Giants, Saquon Barkley had a ridiculous catch. If you haven't seen it, you need to YouTube it. That was fun to watch. 15 carries for 50 yards doesn't sound that exciting. 4 for 24 through the air is kind of ho-hum as well, Matt. But another guy that passes the eye test. He's getting healthy, as we've said in weeks past.
He is, and just some background here. Again, he's 25. He'll be 25 going into next season. He'll be an unrestricted free agent in 2023. He's the running back 7 in December ADP, 15.5 overall. He's only averaging 11.7 PPR points per game this season. That's not enough for how we are valuing him. He is, however, still very valuable on the trade finder. He's in recent weeks, he's gone for Christian McCaffrey straight up. I don't know why. He's gone for Devontae Adams straight up. I guess if you're rebuilding, but I'm probably not doing that one either. He's gone for McLaurin and a first-round pick. So he can still pull some value if you're looking to get out of him. I worry, and this might be completely crazy. I don't know, but I wonder, are we seeing David Johnson repeat himself with Saquon Barkley? A standout rookie season, obviously a very good second season, and then nothing since then. And it was kind of similar for David Johnson. I think his big season was in his second season, but we saw the spark, the flash, so to speak, in his rookie season. So
don't put that out in the atmosphere.
If I feel it, man, and if I can still get Devontae Adams or a first round pick and a receiver like McLaurin for him, unless I am really just I know I'm competing in 2022 like that. I know I'm going to be one of the top teams, and I'm going to take a gamble on Barkley hitting that upside. I feel like I will get out for these current prices.
Well, if I'm competing, I'm taking Adams anyway. So.
Well, of course. But maybe not next season.
Yeah, maybe not. We'll see how that plays
if there's
out.
no Rodgers,
Sure.
there's reasons you could want to go Barkley there, but still.
Yeah, it's I feel like I want Barkley on my teams, and Ryan, you can chime in as well. But it feels like his value kind of tumbles back and forth, up and down just a little bit. And right now, people are frustrated with Saquon Barkley, and I feel it has to do with his surroundings at this point, not his skill level.
Sure. I definitely think that's the case, but and I think we've basically said this on previous episodes. The quarterback is the issue. The coaching staff is the issue. The offensive line is the issue.
The health is the issue.
The health is the issue. And they're not going to fix all of those things by next season. And then he's going to be 26. And then that's when we start moving on from these running backs. So if I can move on now for McCaffrey or Adams or a young receiver in a first, then I think that's an easy call. So for me, it's not that I don't like Barkley or don't want him on my team, but when I look at what I can get, or when I look at the other options in that ADP range, there's just no way I would draft him in the first round or second round. No way.
Maybe I'm probably more interested in trading for him than I am drafting him because as you mentioned, there's way better names at that point. Your opportunity to acquire him comes in trade, but you have to find a manager that's sick of the runaround and the ups and downs and all those kind of things and get good value.
Yeah, I think your best case is probably a future first for him.
I was going to say, is he's not still even a 2+ first guy? Like a 2 first guy. Like that,
you might be able to squeeze a first and a second for Barkley.
Right.
That's probably the upside if you're just looking for draft picks. The Steelers, this game was gross. The Steelers beat the Titans 19-13. There was Steelers had 168 total yards of offense. The only touchdown they scored, their offense, was a quarterback sneak from Ben, and it took 2 chances from 6 inches away. Chase Claypool didn't have a catch. Najee Harris had 12 carries for 18 yards and only caught 2 passes. I don't know what we can say. Ryan, paint a picture for the Steelers. Is there anything good happening in Pittsburgh right now for Dynasty?
For Dynasty, well, Deontay Johnson, Pat Freiermuth, those are both I would.
Yeah, Freiermuth injury was scary.
Right. And that is his second concussion in, I believe, the past month. So that's not good. Deontay Johnson had a quiet game, but of course, still certainly a star for the dynasty from a dynasty point. People, so much you talked to him last week with the issues he had signaling for the first down with time running out and sticking his finger in the opponent's face. Now, basically, the rest of that game or parts of that game last week, he was benched. He was benched seemingly for part of this game. His playing time is dwindling. He's certainly in the doghouse, and I'm starting to see suggestions that he could be shipped out of Pittsburgh this offseason. So that would not surprise me. We know this team is going to go through a lot of changes this offseason. They'll be looking for a new quarterback. We're almost certain that Juju Smith-Schuster has played his final down with this team. We thought that last year, but we'll try it again this offseason. But I wouldn't be shocked if Claypool's on a new roster next season either.
Well, that passing game in general for the Steelers, it's just they can't get a running game going. Their offensive line has problem areas for sure. And when you're only running 45 snaps, offensive plays a game, you can't depend on those wide receivers outside of maybe Deontay Johnson. We saw Johnson play nearly every snap and run almost every route. Ray McLeod ran more routes than Chase Claypool in this game. And that speaks to what you're talking about there, Ryan. They're sick of the headache, really, it feels like to me. And despite his talent level, we're just not going to put up with it for much longer.
And it's weird to say this on a team that has Deontay Johnson and Claypool and Freiermuth and Harris, because they have these big names that we generally place a lot of value on in Dynasty. But when you look at their box score, they had 2 tight ends that played, they had 4 wide receivers that played, and they had 1 running back. Najee Harris played every snap,
and they were all disappointments.
And they were all disappointments. And we only saw the 2 tight ends. Or I shouldn't say only, but Zach Gentry only saw increased work because Freiermuth was out. So this is just a very thin offense right now when it comes to talent.
It's sad really to see happen, but there's going to be some big changes in Pittsburgh in the coming months.
I do think it's becoming pretty obvious, and I like Najee Harris. I think he's talented. I think he's an RB1 in Dynasty, but I think we got a little ahead of ourselves ranking him as a top 2 or 3 running back, which has shown up in both rankings and ADP.
Yeah, and production really over the last handful of weeks for sure. For the Titans, Deontay Foreman was the highlight here. 22 carries, 108.
What a sad statement.
And no touchdowns. You're right about that. He also caught 2 for 27. He's just kind of take that job, and he's been useful, but it's going to disappear here shortly. The Bengals beat the Broncos 15-10. Joe Burrow threw a touchdown to Tyler Boyd, who had 96 yards and 5 catches. Joe Mixon got hurt. Teddy Bridgewater got hurt. It was pretty ugly. Ryan, do we have anything on the Bridgewater and Mixon injuries?
Zach, what is that guy's name? Zach Taylor.
Taylor.
Thank you. Zach Taylor, Bengals head coach.
A little forgettable.
Yeah. Unfortunately, didn't have an update on Mixon after the game. Hopefully that
it didn't look good though.
It did not look good. Ankle injury. It's going to be a wait and see, but you're right. It didn't look good. The Teddy injury certainly did not look good either. They did say, he had movement and those things. So hopefully good news there.
Samaje Perine's probably on a roster in your playoffs in most dynasty leagues. If he's not, he's going to be a priority add this week. And then maybe in super flex leagues, we'll see with Drew Lock. He'll 6 for 12 for 88 yards and a touchdown. More willing to throw the ball down the field to his big receivers. So maybe the switch to Drew Lock, if that's what indeed happens, maybe that unlocks something for Tim Patrick or Cortland Sutton or Jerry Jeudy, who did not have a catch in this game.
Bengals get the Ravens next week, so you
Ooh.
probably don't want to rely on Samaje Perine in your playoffs on that.
Yeah, probably not. Somebody we can rely on in the playoffs is Deebo Samuel. The 49ers beat the Falcons 31-13. Samuel had 60 yards receiving on 4 catches and carried the ball 6 times for 29 yards and a rushing touchdown in his 5th straight game. Deebo is making plays from all over the field. Jeff Wilson also got into the action, 21 carries, 110 yards and a score. George Kittle was great. Maybe not Kittle-esque from the last couple of weeks, but 6 for 93 helps dynasty players. I don't know if there's a lot to cover here, guys. Cordero Patterson got a touchdown taken away from him. That was bull. I should have had those 6 points. He was in. Can't believe they reviewed that and took it away from him. The Packers in the last game we got to cover here. They beat the Ravens 31-30 in a game that should not have been that close. At least from my perspective. Rodgers, 268 and 3 touchdowns. Aaron Jones got in the end zone through the air. Devontae Adams scored. MVS, Ryan McDowell, you called that in a conversation we had earlier this week. 5 catches, 98 yards, and a score for him as well. A.J. Dillon scored. If you had him for the Packers, you're happy with how they produced. For the Ravens, Tyler Huntley. Man, he's going to be a high-end quarterback 1. Maybe the quarterback 1. I haven't looked. 215 passing yards, 2 touchdowns to Mark Andrews, who had 10 for 136, and then 13 carries for 73 yards and 2 touchdowns because the Packers don't know how to contain the outside on a pass rush. Matt, Mark Andrews, they unlocked him this year, and he looks like the tight end we all wanted him to become, especially over the last couple months.
Yeah, he's the tight end 2 on the season, has just 4 yards less receiving than Kelsey, both over 1,000 yards.
Wow.
The last 2 weeks, he's been the tight end 2 as well, and he probably would have been the tight end 1 in most weeks, but we had the explosion from Kittle Kelsey on Thursday, and we saw Kittle do it 2 weeks prior to that. So he's on a tear. I feel like he belongs in that top tier. I feel like we definitely set him aside between Kelsey, Kittle, and if you're me, Kyle Pitts. But I think he belongs up there in the same conversation with all those guys. And, maybe even if you want to talk about it from an age standpoint, maybe above Kelsey at this point.
Yeah, I think he's got to be above Kelsey. I think it's a 3-man conversation: Andrews, Kittle, and Kyle Pitts.
Yeah, what's the savvy pivot then in the offseason? If you have Kelsey, are you trying to still maneuver to try to get something on top, moving down to Andrews, or has that ship sailed?
I don't know if you can. I mean, if you could do it straight up, I would probably do it. I made that move with Pitts, earlier this season. Say what you will about that, but it was possible then, maybe not as possible now. If he does finish as the tight end 1 overall, then I'm sure somebody will want to take him. But
yeah, Andrews is just 26 years old, has big games in his past too. This isn't like a huge surprise. Of course, we were looking for him to become a little bit more consistent. Well,
he's done that.
Double-digit targets in 4 out of the last 5, double-digit receptions in the last 2 games, going over 100 yards and scoring 3 times in all in the last 2 games. He's 4 touchdowns in the last 3 games. He's really good.
He leads the position in receptions and receiving touchdowns, and he has 1,062 yards behind Kelsey's 1,066.
He's a mismatch, and it feels to me like the Ravens were like, oh, we got to get the ball to Hollywood Brown. We got to do that for the first half of the season. And then they decided, what are we doing? We have this huge mismatch in the middle of the field. Why are we forcing the ball to this little guy? We got a guy that can jump over everybody and make big plays for us. And that's what they've done. They peppered him with targets, and he looks like one of the best tight ends in football.
And he's done it the last 2 weeks with Tyler Huntley. So I mean, I don't know. Those have been his two of his best games this season. So hopefully Lamar is watching and learning from that.
Well, Huntley, to be fair,
come on, Matt.
Huntley's a better thrower of the football than Lamar Jackson. He way more accurate. He's just not as dynamic.
Well, that's why he should be throwing it to Andrews more, the big target.
You think so? Well, he does. He throws it to Andrews all the time.
I know,
but that's probably a conversation for another day. As we said in the beginning, Happy holidays. Thanks for listening. We appreciate every one of you that tune in every single week. We'll be here throughout the end of the regular season and into the postseason. And then when Dynasty really fires up throughout the off season, because right here at DLF, there is no off season. For Ryan and Matt, I'm Dan. Thanks for listening to this episode of the DLF Dynasty podcast. We'll catch you again next week.